You've stepped into the future. This is Optus Vision.
We await the game's return for months. 40 minutes into its first game last Thursday night, North Melbourne was wishing it could start again. First, Corey McKernan's knee had buckled. Then it was Wayne Carey's shoulder. Nightmares don't come much scarier than this. Sydney shared North's pain a few days later. Champion defender Paul Roos would feel a pack's weight behind his knee, and the worst would be thought. For Collingwood's Lee Walker, the scene was all too familiar. Another knee injury, another reconstruction. Would there be yet another comeback?
Yes, it certainly was a weekend in which some of the biggest names in the game were felled. Hello everyone, I'm Peter Donegan. Thanks for joining us on Football Feedback. I'll be minding Tim Lane's chair until the end of the South African cricket tour. And really, if this weekend's action was anything to go by, I'll be needing a break, I think, by the time that Tim returns. Now, Lee Walker was a round one victim and his career is now in real jeopardy. We'll be going live to Vimy House tonight to talk with Walker's orthopaedic surgeon, Mr. Justin Feller, who earlier this afternoon performed Walker's fourth knee reconstruction. Well, this time last year, Neil Baum was licking his wounds after a 20-goal hiding at the hands of Geelong. Tonight, he's basking in the afterglow of a defeat of the reigning Premier North Melbourne. He'll also be joining us a little later on. We've got plenty to discuss and a new look panel to introduce, so without any further ado, may I welcome a Hawthorn legend who did actually play a little bit of footy with Sydney and Collingwood. Dermot Brereton, welcome.
Good evening, Scoopy Donegan. How are you?
It's good to see you, and it was a fantastic opening round, wasn't it?
It was amazing. There was plenty of highlights all around and enough people bit the dirt to keep us all excited. Otherwise, it was going to be looking a bit one way, but it's wide open now. Even though it's round one, it's always going to be wide open now. But gee, the future looks pretty bleak for some people.
And also joining us, Sunday Age chief football writer Rowan Connolly. Have you calmed down after today yet?
Only just. I'll tell you what, if there's too many more games like that, I don't think I'll be making it to the end of the season either. It was a real heart-thumping contest, but just a fantastic way to open the season, all the injuries aside. It's just really got off to a great start, really.
Yeah, the adrenaline really was flowing at the MCG this afternoon. 82,000 people, and there was actually an incident after the siren, which is going to cause a bit of talk amongst the media over the next few days involving Greg Williams.
Well, he seemed to give him a good shove off there, and I think it looked like Andrew Coates getting in his face. It was sort of almost like the Graham Carberry, Phil Carman incident where he really went around and got right into his personal space, wouldn't you say? And I think Diesel will say that he wasn't looking at him when he pushed him away. He'll just say that that was just somebody in his face. He didn't know who it was and he pushed him away. But pretty harmless act, but one of three people you don't want to be touching out in the ground for sure.
Did you think there was much in it, Ray?
Well, there was a fairly interesting just little precede to that, and it was Sean Denham, I think, came off the Essendon bench, and there were certainly a few words exchanged, and I guess, you know, I can almost in a way understand Diesel being a bit unhappy about that. The siren's gone or whatever, so he's obviously fronted him for a bit back. And yeah, I think, well, Dermot's obviously in a better position to comment, but I don't think the umpire should be touching the players at all.
No, well, he has got his hand around his hip there, I know. Look, it's just gospel. You just never touch the umpires. You're just inviting conjecture for a start, even if you aren't, even if things are going your way. It's just somewhere you don't want to be.
A special cheerio to Phil Carman, just in case you're watching tonight, Phil. Of course, the big talking point in football was the injury in the very first game of the season to Wayne Carey, and the bad news that he'll be missing for around about 10 to 12 weeks. And really, the game of football could well do without things like this.
Yeah, he was pretty stiff, actually. He made the front position, and he has got a bit of a weakness there. But look, I don't know about your thoughts on it, Rowan, but having played in the same position as Wayne, I think he's... not that you wish it on anyone, but he has had an amazing run of luck playing at centre-half forward and not having more injuries. I've looked at him over the last 3 years and thought, how long can this fella's body stand up playing there? And it just stands up. It keeps performing to the utmost of everybody's expectations.
Well, I think the proof of the pudding is the fact that he's missed something like 8 games in 5 or 6 seasons. So amazing durability for a guy, as you say, playing that position. But We spoke to him on the weekend, and he did reveal the previous shoulder problems. I guess it's been a bit like an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, well, there you go. Since '92, 8 games without Carey for the Kangaroos, and they've lost 7 of those. Dennis Pagan trying to play down the loss. But, of course, when you lose a player the calibre of Carey, well, it's going to have a big impact on the side.
I am glad he at least had the grace to say they were 2 fairly handy players and it would hurt them a bit. I think, too, we use the analogy of the Black Knight in Monty Python claiming only a flesh wound. To do otherwise would have been that, I think.
The basic thing was there, though, that obviously you could never afford to lose Carey, but we'll be talking to Barmy a little bit later. But Melbourne, don't take it away from them, even when Carey was on the ground, unless Carey lifted his work rate to an abnormal amount, I thought Melbourne were even going to be in with a real big show at that stage of the ground before he got injured.
And of course the other North Melbourne injury was Corey McKernan, and fortunately this is only going to be probably 1, maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, it looked like it could be a bit more serious than that initially, didn't it? And I guess everyone's mind went back to the preliminary final last year, and what actually then seemed a fairly minor injury turned out to be a torn cartilage. So they would have been very, very anxious. But yeah, as you say, I mean, probably missed 1 at worst. And boy, he's going to be an even more key player for him now, really, isn't he?
Wasn't it a sad sight to see Carey and McKernan walking across the ground, 2 of the biggest names in football at half-time there? They just look so forlorn.
I don't think Joe Gutnick would have thought it was too sad a sight. He wouldn't want any permanent damage, but he probably thought, oh, that's a bit of stroke of luck. And notice they put the tracksuit pants straight on him to try and cover which knee it was, because I don't think we for certain still know which knee that has been damaged over the weekend.
There was a story doing the rounds that Neil Baum went into the Melbourne rooms after the game and told the players he'd had a dream that they'd win, but he said he didn't count on the dream featuring Carey and McKernan being hurt. So, a bit of good fortune for him.
Well, another one of the big names in footy who was injured on the weekend was Paul Roos, and this looked a bad one when it happened.
This is superhuman effort, though. That's just real courage. I mean, every coach wants to see, you know, the courage of a centre-half back backing into the oncoming full-back, full-forward, but for sure you just don't want to see him go down like that. You see this, his toe gets dug in, and his toe digs into the ground, and the momentum of Morrison moving forward, just, you could almost sense that once the toe dug in, it just pulled the knee forward like that, gave it a bit of a stretch and a tweak, and he shouldn't be too far out of the game, though, maybe a couple of weeks.
What's the latest, right?
Well, I reckon he was walking around afterwards. He took an early flight back to Sydney, got some treatment. I think, yeah, 1 or 2 probably at the most. What is interesting is I wonder if the fact that he's, 32 or 33 makes it that much harder to come back off a similar injury to, say, a McKernan or someone like that.
The only thing with that is, though, you're probably right, as you know, the younger you are, the quicker your body seems to heal itself. But yes, but look, he's with Roosie knowing as much about the game as he does, his work ethic off the track is meant to be supreme. So I can't see him not going to the physio twice a day for the next 2 weeks.
Well, I think the injuries to McKernan and also to Carey have certainly grabbed the headlines, but probably the outpouring of sentiment came for the injury to Lee Walker. And everyone at Collingwood was just shattered about this. Derm, I know you've played with him, and everyone was just so down in the dumps.
He's a terrific kid, Tangles, too. You look, it's just a great sign of how much he's had to work. You look at him run there and see the muscle definition in his leg. That's because he spent so long on the weight machines, on the gym machines, just building up the muscularity in his legs. You can see it there, the back of his legs there, just holding everything together, but it's obviously there's a real weakness there, it's just not enough.
And the amazing thing was it looks so innocuous too. Yeah. I mean, we thought, okay, there's a minor injury, but we all went into the press conference after the game thinking that, it was a 1-2 week job, and then Tony Shaw told us, so we were as shocked as they were. Really.
And you have a look at Roos's one, and Roos looks so bad.
Yep.
And there looked to be nothing in Walker's one, and completely different results.
Well, I can remember Neil Danaher walking off Windy Hill back in 1981. We thought he'd be back the next week. He didn't play for 3.5 years or something.
Yeah,
so.
It's amazing. Gary Pert did a knee once, and he was coming back from an injury, and he was in I think it was the Reserves Cup, the Commodore Cup in those days, and he snapped a couple of ligaments, and probably the thing that turned Gary Pert's career from being, I thought, probably the second best backman I've ever played on behind Glendenning, into a good league player, not the same standard. He just jogged off the ground. He was gritting his teeth. It looked pretty gutsy, but he just jogged off the ground. It was just a sign of the character.
Yeah.
Speaking of injuries that looked bad on the weekend, this one to Ian Downsborough, well, I think we're going to have to remind him about what happened in this game. This was a shocker.
Yeah, well, one bloke you don't want to run into the head of is Scotty Burns, because it is full of cement. He's just...
He's taken over from Ned.
Well, you don't know about if he could take over from Ned, but he is just one real hard customer. In fact, I think if you looked at him in a boxing ring, you say as long as he can lay out, throw a few punches, he's your Joe Frazier. He'll cop 2 to give 1, and he'll still win the fight because he's a very tough fella.
I can tell you, we were waiting outside the Port Adelaide rooms on Saturday night as they took him off in the ambulance, and I've seen some fairly bad concussions. That looked like a double concussion. He looked dead to the world.
Yeah, and I think he was out before he hit the ground too. Well, after the game, we caught up with Port Adelaide coach John Cale, and this is what he had to say about Ian Downsborough's injury.
Downsborough is not bad. He'll spend the night in hospital. He has concussion, so it'd have to be a doubt for next week.
I would think so, if he wakes up in time for next week.
Next couple of weeks. No, he really did look quite sick, and I guess it was a fairly pertinent reminder to those of us who haven't graced an AFL field just how tough the game is sometimes.
The thing is, though, you rarely see anybody play a good game the week after they come back from a real serious head injury like that, or concussion bout like that.
Now, we've gone through the injuries. Here's one that might have been an injury, and I think the whole crowd at the MCG held their breath when this happened to Matty Richardson. Finishes up kicking the goal and lands awkwardly, but it was what happened afterwards that you could almost... It was palpable, the groan that went up from the crowd, or the silence when he went down.
The thing that saved him, though, after he's kicked that, he's got like 2 or 3 little stutters in, and if he had gone down in one big screaming heap, the foot had planted solidly, he might have been in trouble. But his feet actually take 2 or 3 little stutters, so they kept moving, which kept him, well, basically airborne, and didn't get the plant of the foot and the rotation in the knee.
Is that the cruciate test?
Well, according to Dr. David Barham, who's had a knee reconstruction, that's the way they test for a cruciate ligament. So, yeah, obviously they were concerned enough to think it could have been potentially a really serious one.
Well, I think Matty said after the game it was just a knock on the knee and the bandaging was for precaution, so let's hope that that is the case, because we certainly don't want to see Matthew Richardson with another knee injury. That game, gee, it had everything, didn't it? It was, a lot of people accused Geelong of being soft. They were anything but soft, and the conclusion was an exciting one. John Barnes may have just had a say in changing the result of the game in the last minute.
For a league player, you just should not miss these. It was always going to roll through that ball. You see Barnesy, good presence of mind just to balk around there.
Why didn't he run an extra 3 steps? That's what I kept asking myself.
I don't know why he went for the dribble. All you need to do is kick a mongrel, but you kick it through the air and you just punch it as hard as you can from there. A tumble punt even, but he actually, when he made contact with it, he tried to kick a floater along the ground. It's amazing.
It has to be asked, is that as bad as Percy Jones kicking the post at Moorabbin that time?
Well, it was funny, right when that happened, I said to the person sitting next to me, Percy Jones will be standing up and applauding because somebody is taking the heat off him after all these years.
And we can't talk about famous misses without mentioning Malcolm Blight. I'm sure Malcolm would be very disappointed if we didn't actually mention that one at the MCG. Now, the reaction of Robert Walls after this game, I thought there was some significance in this, because there have been a few words around in football circles that he was under the pump a bit, and look at this. This is a round 1 game, remember?
Yeah, it is a pretty amazing reaction for round 1, isn't it? But you're right, I mean, the rumour mill's been buzzing with problems at Punt Road, so I think they were seen to have underachieved more than any other side last year, and the onus is on them to get a really good start. I actually like Richmond's chances this year. I think they'll do pretty well.
Well, I spoke to Matty Richardson after the game, and just the way he played, I was honest with him, and I said, look, if you spend most of your game plan running back off your opponent towards goal, you're putting your game in the lap of the gods on somebody else making an error. But he, on Saturday, just met the ball time and time again. That's the best game of league footy I think I've seen Matty Richardson play, because when they came out of defence, Richmond, and they're under pressure, you want to see a big target moving, and he supplied that all the time for them.
Now, the other hot topic in footy over the weekend was one that the new Western Bulldogs would probably care to forget about, because this really was a public relations disaster. Look at all those empty seats, only about 8,000 people there, and this ticketing business has really got a lot of people offside.
The symbolism of it is the worst thing, isn't it? You've got a 2/3 empty stadium and you're slugging people up to $24 to go. I think the most reprehensible thing about it really was that the footy public, I mean, even the AFL admitted to me today, they didn't know about it until it happened. So they've tried, you can't help coming to a conclusion they've tried to sneak this through because they need the money, hoping that they'll get away with it. They probably expected some backlash, maybe not to the extent it has, but the fact that they've already decided to put in 2,500 unreserved seats for $12.50 now means that they've, at least they've listened to people this time.
Also, Rowan, isn't there the situation where if you buy your Footscray membership, you entitle yourself to a reserve seat there? Is there a situation?
Well, yeah, I think the first 3,000 unreserved seats go to Footscray members. Once that's full up,
so it's
then
an enticement for membership also.
Oh, sure.
I didn't know was. I wasn't clear of that.
No, I think one of the main problems with it now is there's so many different levels of admission, and I think the bulk of the football public still believes that if you're a member, you go through with your membership ticket. If you're not, you pay $12.50 and you can go in and stand and watch the game. I asked Mark Patterson directly yesterday. No one could enter that ground for $12.50 on Saturday, and I think that's appalling.
Well, I think David Smorgon actually got on radio this morning and apologised for what had happened, and hopefully there won't be a repetition. But we caught up with AFL Communications Manager Tony Peake and asked him what his opinion was of the situation at Optus Oval on the weekend.
Well, basically the clubs have the right to set reserve seat prices. Clearly, as we understand it, the Bulldogs have had a review of what occurred on Saturday and have altered their pricing policy for the remainder of the season.
Well, let's hope we don't get a repetition, but I think there is a bit of a fear that we might in games to come.
Well, I was talking to some AFL heavies today, and I know they're very worried about Carlton's first game against Adelaide in round 3. Now, my understanding is that they might have even less unreserved seating than the Bulldogs did, and I think you can bet it in there'll be a bigger crowd that day. So could be bedlam at the turnstiles that day. I think the bottom line personally though is surely if you want to entice new members, you have to give them the opportunity to check out the product first. Now if you make them buy a season seat and a membership ticket, you're not doing that. You're committing them to too much money up front.
It's getting to be a bit like the Scottish Soccer League between Rangers and Celtic, isn't it? You've got to buy your seat for the next 20 years, otherwise you don't get to see the game.
That's right. You don't know if your side's going to be any good that far down the track.
True.
Now, normally after round 1, we'd have a bit of dissension amongst the players and the coaches. You know, there'd be a bit of a few runctions going on there. Well, guess what? The umpires are in the headlines. They're disenchanted already, and it's round
Who
1.
with?
Well, they're disenchanted with the system that's going to go on because apparently all umpires are going to get 6 games in the first 12. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the understanding. And boy, going on North Melbourne on Thursday night and that free kick against David King, I don't know if I'd be wanting that umpire to umpire my matches.
Is that the softest double goal of all time?
Well, it really is. I mean, the thing about that was it just showed a real lack of common sense, and you don't want a decision like that determining the outcome of a game. And I think, if you've got inexperienced umpires who are shown not to be able to cope in the heat of the moment like that, you don't guarantee them another 5 games. I mean, what could happen?
Is it a bit like Derm having the 42 players on the list and you guarantee that in the first half of the season you're going to play every one of them?
Well, it is a little bit actually, because you've got to find out whether the guys. Some guys just don't play that well in reserves, but you look at them and say they're going to be senior players someday. You give them a try in league standard, a couple of games, and they might make it. Well, it might be the same with umpires, but gee, it's an expensive price to pay if they're not up to it. You put a bloke in who should be umpiring Narnagoon West versus Woori Alec, and he's umpiring today between 80,000 spectators at a Carlton Essendon game. It's a big risk.
Now, to see if there was disquiet amongst the umpires, we caught up with AFL umpires coach David Levins.
But in terms of what I'm observing on the track, in terms of what I'm observing in the coaching room and out on the ground, I only see morale being in a very positive light.
Where would something like this stem from? How does it emerge?
Well, I read the article to which you refer, and it spoke about umpires getting 6 games regardless of form. Now, that's inaccurate. We won't be running umpires in AFL football who don't deserve to be there. Sure, we'll run umpires who are contracted like we've done in the past, and I don't know where it comes from, to be quite honest.
Could it be an umpire that maybe not up to standard to what you're saying and is now turning around and paying perhaps the price for not having the good performances?
I don't know who it might be. I've seen the quotes, and they've quoted a senior umpire. That's his right if that's what he wants to do. But in terms of on-field performances, in terms of who's selected, we have said that guys will be provided with an opportunity, contracted umpires. We've seen guys, and we believe they should have a contract. We've contracted them, and we'll be picking from them.
AFL umpires coach in David Levins. Well, Thursday night was supposed to be a big night for North Melbourne. As it turns out, Melbourne spoiled their party, and we'll be chatting with Melbourne skipper Gary Lyons shortly, who's been kept in after school despite the fact that he's made the successful comeback. But he has arrived, and we'll be talking to him very shortly. But North Melbourne's night, well, it all started off with the unfurling of the flag in the presence of absolutely no one.
Yeah, well, blinking, you would have missed it. I mean, really, you can laugh about it, but I just think this is an appalling display of disrespect to the North Melbourne fans. All 20 of them gathered in the background there. I mean, you had no players present. I think Ron Casey's wife unfurled the flag, but there was a distinct lack of ceremony, and the reason was that North said they didn't want to be distracted for the game ahead. Now,
look, that is idiocy, and sounds a bit boastful, Scooby, but having done it 5 times,
only 5, just the 5.
But it is an amazing thing. Like the best times in a league career are the final side, or the time you run out on the grand final day. You hear 100,000 roar, you swear or cheer. The final siren, when you know, hey, that's ours, and the following season when you stand lined up in front of the unfurled flag, and you just, as soon as they say, righto, off you run, boys, you run off, and you just suck in your chest and you breathe in the atmosphere of the grand final, the flag you've just won, and it is an amazing thing, and you just play with them as much adrenaline as you've ever mustered before, and those North Melbourne boys were deprived of it.
well, I think you just made a good point. I mean, you went through it 5 times. I mean, you're talking about a club that's won 3 premierships in 72 seasons of league footy, so it's not like it's an everyday occurrence. And
No.
I really fail to see how that little time's going to disrupt the players' focus that much. The other thing you'd like to point out here is Carlton. Everyone would remember in 1995, they liked their flag so much they unveiled it about 3 or 4 times. And they then promptly went on to win 10 of the next 12 games, so it didn't do them a lot of harm. And I just think that's taking the whole psychological side of football too far. I mean, who are we playing the game for?
Yeah.
Well, as you can gather, we're only 1 round into the season, and there is a lot to talk about in AFL footy. After the break, we'll be joined by Melbourne skipper Gary Lyons. We'll also be talking more about Lee Walker's knee reconstruction as we cross live to Vimy House. You're watching Football Feedback.
Sports AFL on Optus Vision.
It's the channel with everything.
News.
News for North Melbourne is not all that good.
Weather.
Drama.
Comedy.
Even romance.
Like we said,
Everything you could want from a TV channel.
See all the footy on Sports AFL, but only with your Optus Vision.
In April 1997, this is ESPN. Oh, and it goes down! Live and exclusive World Cup soccer qualifiers and the UEFA Cup.
Tremendous goal!
Live and exclusive Major League Baseball.
Get out at second base!
Live and exclusive Davis Cup tennis. Plus, all the glamour and excitement of the Monte Carlo Open.
There it is. Mooster does it again in Monte Carlo.
Live and exclusive PPG IndyCars and the legendary Dakar Rally.
Watch this. He's not giving up.
Live and exclusive from Las Vegas, the Senior PGA Tour.
Yes! I don't care how many times I see it, I still love to see it.
Live and exclusive NBA action and the pulse-pounding extreme scene.
Back-to-back super difficult tricks to try.
There's only one place you'll see it all. ESPN Channel 11.
for the ultimate sporting experience, phone 133399.
We got all the stuff off the wall, number one. Get rough. See them when they tumble, watch them when they cast the power and the passion like was meant to be like this. See it all, come alive. The main attraction right before your eyes. See it all, only when your heart does vision. See it all.
Prime Minister John Howard.
Right up in your face. See them when they kick and try to get a little space. See it all. Come alive. The main attraction right before your eyes. See it all. Only with your Optus Vision. See it all. Only with your Optus Vision.
What a weekend it was for the Port Adelaide Football Club, accompanied by Rowan Connolly on air guitar there during that piece before the bounce of the ball at the MCG on Saturday. And as I said, he was kept in after school. In fact, he's just arrived from training. Melbourne skipper Gary Lyon, welcome.
Good evening, Pete. Thanks. And haven't got my note, but the coach will be along later for the Please Explain.
Now, you're still on a high after the events of Thursday night, getting through the game for a start and winning the game secondly.
Yeah, I think we've come down to earth now. It was a pretty solid night we had tonight on the track, actually, and we've got a relatively short week in the overall scheme of things with Easter and everything else. We play Friday night, so we're pretty well back on track, but it was a good way to spend Easter, I must say, having knocked off the reigning premiers and against all odds too, I'd have to say.
How does the body feel, all right?
Oh yeah, look, I'm getting to see a bit of a pattern form. The next day I pull up pretty well, and then it tends to be second and third day where I have a few troubles, but Derm would be well versed in that. I seem to be coming good at the moment today, so Friday night's looking all right.
Didn't have a lot of jumps in there, Gary. You're just pushing and shoving.
No, look, I just want to get through. I worry about getting the footy the next week or two, but no, pulled up all right, so pretty good, Pete.
Well, there were a lot of highlights for the Demons, and there were a lot of highlights in round one, as we've already discussed. Let's take a look at the best of the best.
Yeah, first here, the instinct goal from Sean Charles as he roved brilliantly.
He's got it, another one. He's second for the quarter. They're going to come
well, Peter Bell here didn't have a real busy night, but a pretty spectacular one-hander, then finished off with a goal.
And Winston Abraham here, have a look for the big fly.
Oh, sensational mark by Winston Abraham.
Yeah, he missed a few easy goals too, but this one sealed the game here for the Fremantle Dockers. He is mercurial.
Crosses the tackle. They've got to take a mark. O'Reilly advances. It's a goal! Dockers in front with 26 seconds remaining.
And Nathan Buckley with the set, the big saw.
Back towards centre. Oh, what a mark! He had his name written all over that. It was in mid-air.
It's okay. All coaches love to see their forwards working hard, and here's Lee Walker laying a great tackle.
The tackling is fierce, and he finds Patterson, centre of the ground.
And Robbie Armat here, very talented, a great running goal.
Races in the goal, Armat. Will it get there? I think it will. Yes, brilliant goal.
Peter Everett for one of his few big grabs for the night, but it was a good one.
Gathers Everett.
Pretty early on that one. And Stewie Lowe, a typical strong mark in the pack.
Stewie Lowe. That's how you pin him.
Nicky Winmar almost won the game off his own boot. Vintage Winmar.
And a great Tony Modra snap.
It's an opportunity for Modra. Flicks it in towards goal. This is going to be close. He's kicked another one. The Crows are on fire. Straight kicks in.
And Troy Bond just showing some amazing athleticism there.
And Richmond's Paul Bullis, he gets crunched here.
Oh, he was hit very hard.
When they're front on, he can't protect himself. He sees it coming at the last minute. Kick forward has been marked.
I know it's only round one, Derm, but this just could be goal of the year.
Seems to be able to read everything, Peter Matera. Look at this. BOG, thank you very much. You would like to see that a few times.
A bit of Peter Matera magic, and we've seen it so often over the years, and it only took him just one game to get back into that magic. A couple of fantastic goals from him. Well, dare I say it, I think Lee Walker probably felt a bit like Paul Bullis did when he got crunched after the events of Saturday at the MCG. And unfortunately, the news doesn't look good for him. We caught up with Lee this morning just before he entered Vimy House.
You know, hopefully it's not going to be another one, but we'll just see what happens, mate. So hopefully, you know, it won't be the worst, but if it is, then, you know, we've got a pretty big decision to make. So, you know, we'll just see what happens from there, mate. But the club's right behind me, so yeah, it's just one of those things, mate.
Hand pass to Walker, good play. Walker chips to Patterson, great play by Lee Walker.
Feeling the pressure there, so too is Moore.
The tackling is fierce as Prestigiacomo comes away.
Couldn't take it cleanly. Here's Lee Walker. Pops the hand pass over the top. Goes towards Williams. I should say. Organised. And he's laid He is a very good player.
Yeah, no doubt I'll be able to play again, but just a lot of work to get back, and you know, we'll just see what happens from there. So our knee's a knee, I suppose. It's not the best, but I'll just as I say, just sort of see what the docs have to say after today, and just take it as it comes from there. But still very keen to keep playing, so just make that decision when it comes, mate.
If it does need major surgery, will that happen today?
Yeah. I'm going in for the arthroscope, and if I get over the Rico, then that's just the way it is, mate. So I'll come out smiling anyway, I think. So whatever happens, I'm still walking. So it's just the way it goes, mate.
Coming out smiling, Lee Walker, and that's one thing you've got to admire about that bloke, the fact that he can stand up there, face the media, and still with a smile on his face.
He's the nicest bloke playing league football. He's almost like, you wouldn't call him the same player, but he's very talented. The modern-day Terry Danaher with his philosophy on life. But you've got to remember also, when he was young, the Eagles took him on when they were the best team in the comp, and they let him go just because of injuries, and they pinned big hopes on him. He is a sensational player if he was... if injuries allowed him to fulfil that talent.
Was rated as highly as Glenn Jakovic as a junior from all accounts, but I mean, just testimony to how highly he's regarded there. I've never seen so many players on a winning side make reference to one guy being injured, and Shawry's whole press conference basically was along the lines of what a tragedy it had been.
Yeah. Well, we caught up with Tony Shaw after the game, and despite the fact that Collingwood had won by around about 12 or 13 goals, you certainly wouldn't have known it from the mood in the rooms.
It's about as good a start as you would have hoped for?
We expected to win, but, you never know with a club playing their first initial game in the competition, that's going to be... You think they'd be really ready for it, and there's no doubt, we believe we could win. I think we can take something out of it, but we've probably got a little personal thing, which I think looks like Lee Walker's done his knee again and won't play for the rest of the year. We'll see on Monday, so... to me, I'd give, like I said in there, to those blokes, this bloke's been a sensational bloke around the club since he's been there, and I don't know whether I'd give the win away, but I'd give it back to the 10, 11 goals if it meant he was going to play for the rest of the year. It's just a sad fact of life, isn't it? We'll stick by him. If it meant that he even had won an argument, I think I'd stick by him. I don't see you can't get any problems at 42. I know you've got to play games, but a lot of our blokes from 35 to 42 don't play a lot of games anyway and probably won't play senior footy. So maybe having him there for the 2 games, if he ever does come back next year, might be worthwhile. And the example that he sets, I think, it is worthwhile. So I'll stick by him.
Tony Shaw speaking after the game on Saturday, and I think everyone in the football world felt for Lee Walker when they saw him limping across the MCG after damaging that knee yet again. And he did undergo the surgeon's knife for the 4th time this afternoon. If there is a football god this time, let's hope it will yield a miraculous result. And joining us live to talk about that from Vimy House is the man who operated on Walker's knee, Mr. Julian Feller. Julian, first of all, thanks for your time. Was it in fact a reconstruction?
Yes, unfortunately, Lee had torn the previous anterior cruciate ligament reconstruction in that right knee, and we have done another reconstruction today.
Now, Julian, have you given Lee any personal advice of which way to go, or have you just told him basically at this point in time what the extent of the injury was?
At this stage, we've just really talked about what was likely to be the result of today's surgery. He's really not in a state to be taking that in at the moment, and talked in a general sense about what might come. I mean, of course, it's a difficult question. Does he try and make a comeback? And for someone like Lee who loves his footy, I'm sure he will. Would you be willing to divulge which way you'd make the recommendation at this point in time? Well, I think it comes down to your own philosophy. From a surgical point of view, I guess the question is, if he did something again, could we still do something? And the answer to that would be yes. Then you've got the question of, is he doing more damage to his knee in the long term by keeping going? And fortunately for Lee, he really doesn't have much in the way of wear and tear in his knee. So from that point of view, it's hard to justify not having another crack at it. And then I guess it's just up to Lee whether he's got the mental fortitude to keep going, and I think by all accounts he does.
At what point, Julian, does he risk long-term damage to his knees that will affect him in later life, let alone his football career? I mean, is there a risk of that?
I think that's a risk that many footballers face. The damage doesn't show up for perhaps 10, 15, even 20 years down the line, and whilst one might get away with a bit of niggling knee pain towards the end of a career, that can certainly change over the next 10 years. And it's very difficult to say to someone, look, you've got to stop, because it's hard to make decisions based on what might happen 15 or 20 years down the line.
Now, Julian, was there ever any thought of artificial ligaments in the operation at all?
Not today, there wasn't. I think artificial ligaments at present really don't have much of a role in reconstructive surgery. We can use some substances to try and increase the strength of the ligament that we're putting in there, but the history of the artificial ligaments hasn't been that great, maybe 5 years down the line.
Now, Julian, is it an inherent weakness here, or is it just bad luck?
Yeah, I think it really is just bad luck for Lee. On the surface, one might say, well, 4 major reconstructions, there must be something wrong with his tissues, but in fact, up until today, there have been 4 separate operations, 2 on the left knee for different cruciate ligaments and 1 on the right knee. Today's the first time he's actually required surgery for a rupture of that reconstruction. And then when you look at the mechanism of how it happened, even a normal knee may well have suffered the same sort of fate. So I don't think we can really say that he's got bad tissues.
And sorry, go ahead, Gary.
Julian, I was just going to ask you, Jason Dunstall played 7 months after a reconstruction. In your own mind, what's the layoff period, your suggested layoff period before you could get back into it?
We don't really know what the safe time is. From a practical point of view, from maybe 4 or 5 months, it's reasonable to get into training again if everything else is moving along well and the knee isn't swollen and the muscles are coming back. In reality, it seems to take somewhere around 9 to 12 months for people to really make a successful comeback, and I just don't think we know what the absolute minimum is.
Do you think, Julian, there's anything you might do differently this time around? I mean, can you deliberately bring him along more slowly? Can you change the method of the rehabilitation?
I think you can do things, and we've actually done a little bit along that sort of line. Not that he came back fast last time, it took him a whole season to come back, but in fact we've done a reinforcement procedure on the outside of the knee to try and improve the chances of this knee standing up in later times.
Now, Julian, just seeing Tangles run off the ground, the muscular definition in his legs was superb, and being the first game of the year, probably the time of the year when players are at their strongest, is this going to aid in his recovery at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. Tangles has worked absolutely phenomenally over summer building up his muscles. On the left knee, where his posterior cruciate ligament isn't so good, he's really had to depend very much on the quadriceps muscle at the front of the thigh, and he's just worked sensationally to do that. His right leg, in fact, is stronger than the left, so that should help him.
Has this been hard for you personally, knowing the bloke and knowing the consequences involved? Has it been hard for you as a doctor and knowing what he's facing now to be there watching when it happened again?
Absolutely. I was devastated for the guy. I've got to know him pretty well over the past couple of years, and as was said earlier, you couldn't meet a nicer bloke. I don't think he's got an enemy in the world. He loves his football, and all he wants to do is run out there and play again.
And he's probably given you enough business to buy that Porsche in the garage behind you, Julian.
Yeah, I don't think that's mine, Dermy.
Julian, the next few days for Lee, a couple of days obviously in hospital, but would you suggest perhaps he get away from the club for a while? He'd be on crutches, I know, but what would you suggest for his own mental state of mind?
He's the sort of guy who likes to get straight back into it, and I'm sure he'll get down to the club as soon as he can, probably even on the weekend, I'd imagine. He's already had his mates in. Nathan Buckley was waiting at the door as he was wheeled out of theatre, and I think he's going to get that sort of support from the club in the ensuing weeks, and probably from that point of view, he's pretty keen to get straight on with the rehabilitation.
It's almost a sad situation, Julian, isn't it? But it's almost like that Tangles, his whole football career, all he really knows is rehabilitation, so his mental frame will be all right.
Well, he certainly knows what he's up against, and I mean, it's a pity because when you see him play, he's obviously got the talent, and it'd be just great to see him get through a season.
Julian, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate the fact that you've joined us on Football Feedback tonight. Now, you're involved in something called Football Australasia. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, that's right. That's a conference that we're holding next year in Melbourne in July. The plan is to get together practitioners involved in treating injuries in the 4 different codes of football played in Australia and New Zealand. And the idea is that they share their experiences and hopefully take new ideas about specific injuries back to the individual codes. Currently we're at the stage of looking for sponsorship, so anyone who's interested can certainly contact us.
Now, Julian, you're obviously there at Vimy House. You haven't put Tangles too close to Wayne Carey, have you?
No, I think they're far enough apart.
Just on that Football Australasia, Julian, the AFL did do a pretty detailed study of the injuries some time ago, didn't they?
Yes, and there is an ongoing study at the moment. What we're trying, part of the conference will be looking at the data that we've got to see whether we can draw any conclusions from that. And the other thing is to try and formulate ways of either preventing injuries or improving the recovery time.
All right, Julian, again, thanks for your time. We appreciate the fact that you've joined us tonight, and let's keep our fingers crossed for Lee. We all do. I think the football world in general does that.
We all do. Thank you.
Julian Feller joining us from Vimy House to talk about Lee Walker's knee reconstruction today for the 4th time. Well, as we said, it should have been a happy day for Collingwood with a pretty impressive victory, 26 goals on the board and a win by round about 13 goals. Unfortunately, the mood wasn't all that great. And of course, a man who had first-hand knowledge of Collingwood was the opposition coach, John Cahill, coaching for the first time in the big time since the preliminary final of 1984. And after the game, we caught up with Jack and asked him his opinion of the first up performance.
Early in the third quarter, we were not a chance to win, but I thought we could be respectable if we could have just kept going at that pace and pressure. But we made too many unforced errors, and it was a good learning curve for a lot of young players. Some of the young players haven't even seen MCG, and we brought them out here last night, and they were very, very nervous. But once they hit the ground, that's where they live, and they're trained to play football. So we'll learn a lot from Collingwood. There's no doubt about that. It was a hard initiation, but we expected to do better than what we did.
Fantastic atmosphere in those press conferences. You actually get to see the coach facing the media. Of course, that's something you see all the time, Rowan, and I see quite a bit.
It can be a bit different being in the middle of it, Pete. I must say, it can get a bit hot and sweaty and a little bit angry at times too. But I've got to say, it was a very impressive debut from a coach whose side's just been pasted by 79 points. I think he's got a fair idea on where they're going to finish this year.
He's been through the ropes a few times, though, Jack Cahill. But I was a bit critical of them appointing Jack Cahill. I thought being out of it for a long time, well, league football circles, obviously there's a few innovations in the time that have come in since he's last been at VFL level even then. But he's got Mark Williams with him to help him through the modern day technology, I suppose you'd call it, Gary, of league football.
His tenure may be all that long then, Dan, considering the backup staff that's been appointed.
I do seriously question that, and I would say he'd probably, if he makes it through to October 1998, I'd say that would be highly unlikely.
It wouldn't be a bad, seriously, it wouldn't be a bad introduction as a coach of a new expansion team, if you like, because the expectation wouldn't be enormous in the first year, so you do get to feel your way a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. But look, the one thing is they really did get pumped, and I thought most of the teams that have come into the league, like the Bears or the West Coast Eagles and that, they've just played on adrenaline and real motivation first up. And if Port Adelaide didn't give us a good show in that first game, I can't see them doing much for the rest of the year.
Do you reckon that was what we could have expected from them, though, in their first game, that they would come out with that emotion in the first half and then maybe drop away a bit at the end?
Yeah, I mean, I actually felt that they were at least competitive until about halfway through the third quarter. They were still within 27 points, and the longer it went, I mean, it seemed to me to be a difference in strength and size as much as anything in the end. They really did look like they were physically frail against some of the Collingwood blokes, I felt.
Well, they've been disappointed in with the recruiting process, perhaps not attracting some of the bigger names that they chased along the way, because they didn't get the real big names they were after, did they?
No, and I think the thing on Saturday that would have disappointed them particularly and doesn't augur well for the rest of the season is that the AFL experienced blokes were probably their worst players. I mean, Paxman had a shocker, Cummings had an absolute shocker. A few others weren't that impressive, and the promise they showed really came from guys like Donald Dickey, Daryl Poole, guys that haven't played league footy before.
Yeah, well, Daryl Poole actually, I think, got them a couple of goals, really, with his work in the ruck.
He has a dip. He's a real... I've watched him playing for Port in the SANFL a bit, and he really throws his body in. He's a real sort of old-fashioned centre-half forward, I think.
They reckon if anybody decides to take it up to Poole, he won't be bluffed. He'll give it out to anybody, and will have a real crack at anyone who gets in his way.
Well, that was a Port Adelaide tradition. I guess that's what they're banking on a fair bit.
The longer the game went on, it just seemed as though the tempo of the game got to the Port Adelaide players, and their manning up really fell away from probably about midway through the third quarter.
Then again, I wondered to what extent Collingwood's a factor here, because Collingwood appear to be a side that when they get on a run and all those midfield on-ball players are playing well, they can rip anyone apart.
Well, Collingwood, I found when I was playing with them, they were like a bully in the schoolyard. You put somebody who could fight up against them, and we used to struggle, but you put them up against one of the lesser lights in terms of teams where they are on the ladder, they used to just bully them and just kick their heads in on the scoreboard.
We could vouch for that round two this time last year. I think we got a fair shellacking from Collingwood. They are very well prepared. They seem to be at the start of the year, and you're right, Rowan, once they get going, they are very tough to stop.
I was going to point out, you were getting a shellacking from everyone at that stage last year, weren't you?
How the wind turns, right?
Yeah, we'll be talking to Barmy about that a bit later. I think it was more than 100 points on Easter Monday, that shellacking between Melbourne and Collingwood last year. Speaking of kicking goals, obviously Barney's goal-kicking practice over the summers worked very well because they kicked 11 straight at one stage.
Yeah, what about that? That was fantastic. They really put them on the board early, and that must be soul-destroying, Gary, to a team when you see that.
Absolutely.
You have the same amount of scoring shots, but you're 30 points behind.
Particularly when you spend half your training week preparing for the zone defence and you're only getting 3 points kicked against you. That is a worry.
Well, they were up to about 18-2 at one stage, I think, so it was pretty phenomenal accuracy.
Paul Williams looked a very good player on the weekend. He really looks as though he's come back very well.
I think, well, personally, I think Buckley and Williams are probably the key to Collingwood. I mean, they're fantastically skilled players, and they just seem to have that capacity to lift a lot of their teammates, bring a lot of those other running link-type players into the game.
You actually did remind me that the last time that Jack Coach was in the preliminary final, what was the margin? 84?
133 points from memory. Baker 6 goals and Van der Haar about 18 marks.
Yeah, terrific to know for all Collingwood supporters out there, and thanks for bringing that up for us, Ro.
Pleasure.
But we spoke to John Cale after the match and spoke about his old side and his thoughts on Collingwood in '97.
I think that Collingwood, given a chance, and particularly if they can get on top early, they'll be a very hard team to beat because they have so many running players. And once they get their confidence up, I think they'll be a hard team, particularly with their army. I think they should make the 8 anyway. And
well, do you agree with that? Are they a top 8 team?
Well, I don't know. Look, they're 3 best on-ballers in terms of running players: Williams, Buckley and Russell. Russell will run the longest distance for them, but and Buckley's probably the highest rated. Beautiful long kick of the ball. I wouldn't call him an exceptional kick. He tends not to find the mark on occasions, but I would say the best one of them is Paul Williams. He's creative, he does run quick, he can bust open sides when he gets on the burst. He doesn't find as much of the ball as Buckley, but then Buckley sometimes, I think, gets the ball without working terribly hard.
Do you think, Gary, they might still have a problem in the key defence posts? I mean, they had Andrew Shawball, who's very good but very young there on Saturday, and Simon Prestigiacomo.
Prestigiacomo.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
That's the Italian pronunciation.
I am married to an Italian.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Oh, well, look, you'd think between Shawball, Prestigiacomo and Gavin Krasiska, you think they've got 3 that can cover 3 tools, and now whether or not they're going to be up to it, I guess time will tell. But look, it is hard to judge after only one round, I know. But Paul Williams, you're right, for a centre line player to be kicking 4 goals a game, now, I'm not saying he's going to do that every week, but that is an enormous advantage, and he is a class act.
He's a super player, but of those 3 players you mentioned, Krasiska and Prestigiacomo, he's the only one who could really develop into a key position player. Krasiska and Shawball really are very tall flankers. They're not really key position players. They still need a big key backman. Aaron James, he's the one I've been waiting.
The Wayne Carey of Collingwood. I think you rated him last year, didn't you?
Well, he is a super player. He is as quick as Carey, bigger and just as strong. If he could just get his head together, get back on the track, he could be anything.
And just quickly, Gavin Brown's form, I obviously didn't see the game, must have been great news for Collingwood.
It was great. I think I was about the only guy in Melbourne that didn't give him votes, so I'm sorry, Gavin, but he did play well, and I think that the half-back flank appears to be a pretty logical position for him.
And it helps when you're half fit too.
Now, that was one of the big crowds at the MCG over round 1. The other one was today between Essendon and Carlton, more than 82,000 people. We'll be back to take a look at some highlights and talk to the coaches. After this break, you're watching Football Feedback.
Saturday on Sports AFL. At 12, it's a replay of Friday night's Melbourne-Collingwood encounter.
Oh, look at that for a mark! Goes for goal, and it's another one for the Maggies.
At 7:30, the Cats go hard against the Eagles, with Geelong wanting to re-establish their ascendancy over the men from the West. Then at 9:45, the young Tigers plan to send Adelaide home with nothing to crow about. See it Saturday on Sports AFL.
Optus Vision gives you a chance to meet your footy heroes. You get tips from the game's best and a free Optus Big Vision show bag. It's free and it's fun. The Optus Big Vision Footy Clinic, Sunday 6th of April at Optus Oval. See you there.
And it'll give us a chance to thank you for your support.
These days, the world is a hectic place. At Sky News Australia, we realise that your life doesn't always fit a nice, neat schedule. That's why you need a news service that's more flexible than the rest. All day and all night, at the top of the hour, the latest news, sport and weather from Sky News Australia.
Prime Minister John Howard's rejected claims.
There's been further political upheaval in Russia.
And on the half hour, we cross to some of the world's most respected news services and major information programs to keep you fully updated. Now, no matter how busy your world gets, we'll keep you in touch with it. And that's important. Sky News Australia.
Woodies have done it. We conquered the defending champions France in outstanding fashion. Now Australia faces its next challenge when they meet the powerful team from the Czech Republic. The Davis Cup, Friday 9:30 on Sports Australia.
The girl who wasn't like the other girls. The pretty girl who didn't flirt and giggle. The one who was good at sports, but never on the team. That girl still isn't like the other girls. She never wanted to be.
Port Adelaide faithful came across the border in their numbers, around 15 to 18,000 of them. They went home with their tails between their legs, but they're looking forward to the first win for 1997 for the Port Adelaide Football Club. And I wonder if they'll see it this year. A lot of people are thinking they may have to wait a little bit longer. Well, as I said today, fantastic spectacle. 82,000 people at the MCG, and they saw Essendon win by 7 points in a thriller over Carlton. And the Blues certainly came out of it with a few injury worries. Michael Sexton was one of them in what was a very physical game, didn't it?
Here we go. Sexton running back with it here, and he just cops a Shea Cockatoo Collins. The ball popped up in the air on the bounce, which took Sexton's eyes up with it. And you see him look up in the air. Oh, that was more of a look up after his head was thrown back from that. But pretty fair stuff. It was just unfortunate. Wrong place, wrong time.
And he's a tough character too. He'll bounce back from that all right.
Well, the good news is I think he's okay. In fact, I asked Kyle Kinnear tonight whether he was concussed, and he claimed he wasn't even concussed. He was just feeling a bit woozy, I think was the quote, so he'll play next week.
Well, that's just an excuse to get him back on the track next week without all the medicos shouting blue murder. Because
What is the official ruling now? I thought if you were knocked out, you had to have a compulsory week off. It seems to have been put on the back burner.
Gary, you're the current player. You should know that for us.
Well, I haven't had concussion for a while,
Well, what's the only one you haven't?
What is the definition of knocked out, and how would you tell with some players anyway?
Well,
Ask Ian Downsborough.
I think clubs are loath to show their hand and say, yes, he's concussed, because the rule states, I think, that they're not to play the next week. So there must be a difference between a concussion and just being knocked out.
But there's also the situation where you're doing the right thing by the rules and doing the right thing by your club.
Oh, there's no doubt that the club's not going to play. I mean, Michael Sexton will play next week, and Campo Reale got knocked out and he'll play next week.
I don't know if he was knocked out, but he certainly did well to come back and play as well as he did.
In the third quarter today, the Brownlow medalist really imposed himself on the game in the early stages of the third quarter, James Hird.
He was good. He was good, actually, because I thought Christie, when he got moved onto him in the latter part of the first half, beat him, but he was just super here. That ball there just hovered around that area through a scrappy passage of play for 10 seconds, and Hirdy got his hands on it, and he was the supreme finisher. He's able to do that, and obviously this is a stand one here. Look at this, rub salt into the wound, just turns around. And while he's still spinning on that pirouette, he kicked it over their head and just kicked the goal here. Now watch this here, this is superb. He pulls it from between his legs almost. Just great eye-hand coordination, awareness of the ball, where it is. He really turned it on, and in the course of the day I would suggest that he was just about the difference between the sides.
Has he got a roving commission from Sheeds that he basically goes wherever he likes?
Well, I think he's got an anything commission, hasn't he? He makes up the rules as he goes along.
Well, it appears so. I mean, he appeared today to move himself into the centre square when they needed it. And I think the interesting thing is people have said perhaps the one thing he doesn't have on a Carey is that ability to just throw on a burst of 5 minutes and win a game. I think today proved that he probably has that ability now. I think he's certainly there.
The only thing he doesn't have on Wayne Carey is that, like Carey's first goal of last Thursday night when he was playing on Nettlebeck, who's a big fella, Carey's able to body, shrug it free, turn around, take the mark. He doesn't have that body size, but gee, he can turn a match in 10 minutes, as he did today.
And his anticipation is such that he really needs to get the body involved in a contest anyway, doesn't he? I mean, he just seems to be able to get the ball free.
He was the only forward on the ground who read the ball coming into the forward line.
I think one thing they're going to be talking about probably as much as the result today is what happened in the last couple of minutes of the game when Essendon took possession of the ball. And first of all, we see Simon spreading it wide to O'Donnell, and watch what happens after this. Now, is this a blot on the game, or is it good tactics?
Well, I don't think it's a blot on the game. I mean, this has been happening a lot more in the last couple of years. I remember Geelong doing it to Carlton in a night game last year. I've certainly never seen a side do it for this long. It was over 3 minutes they held it up for, but they consumed 2 of the 3 minutes that were left, and it essentially won them the game.
Right now, Ron, by now, as a Carlton player, you know you have to win the game. You don't save it from here, so you've got to leave all your options at home that you've been told at three-quarter time. You go and stand next to a man. It is just dumb football by Carlton at this stage not to go and stand next to your man, so they can't do this. That's just idiocy by the Carlton players who were in that area.
And David Parkin was very critical of that after the game too. He said we should have gone man on man.
What was the difference at this stage?
7 points.
So it's called play on there, and once again, I mean, you just stand shoulder to shoulder, Gary, as you'd be well aware, and I think he even goes backwards once more here, does he? Just feign like you're going to go forward. The old run in and close. I used to always, in this situation, run close to the man on the mark and say, oops, sorry, I'll go back again, just try and pinch another 5-6 seconds, which can be vital.
Was it obvious who the Carlton players were who weren't manning up? Was it that obvious?
Yep. There was enough of them in the vicinity, but obviously they wanted to get down the other way. See Ange Christou calling to the umpire, reverse the free kick, reverse the kick. But, gee, you've just got to man them up.
I think we got a pretty good indication how frustrating it was for Greg Williams there in that passage of play. He was obviously just standing there wanting them to get on with it.
It's taken 8 or 9 marks here for Carlton to man up, man on man, and specifically be shoulder to shoulder.
I think it's a bit rich for people to suggest that it's against the spirit of the game. I mean, when guys are diving on the ball in packs at the end of a close game, no one makes the same analogy then. It's only when people are chipping it around. At least they're possessing the ball and doing something with the ball.
It's ugly footy, there's no worries about that, but it's within the rules, and it is something which, as a coach, if you're in front, you would tell your players to do it every time.
Yeah, the Essendon supporters would be waving their scarves above their head today. They won't be saying we won ugly, they'll just be saying we won.
Exactly.
I just kept waiting for the one pass to go astray, and that would have been very embarrassing.
I mean, there is an element of risk in it still. I mean, chipping it around like that is all good and well, but there is that element of risk.
But Gary, when you're a league player and you pass the ball over 18 to 20 metres, how many times do you miss when your man's 15 yards in the clear?
You shouldn't do them, but you do.
Well, after the game, we went to the press conference and we caught up with Kevin Sheedy about that and also about the sensational form of Dustin Fletcher.
Like Fletcher's going to be a good centre back. He'd probably be a good centre forward, you know. I mean, if we had 2 other backmen, tall players that could play backline, he'd probably be a champion full forward, he could be. We'll never see that until we've developed, you know, another 1 or 2 taller backline type players, but he played an exceptional game.
What about holding up the play at the end? Were you happy? You're a bit worried that it might have been too early?
Oh, no, I mean, it was only about the 2.5 minute mark, so...
Did you send a message out at all? Or?
Oh, they know.
They know?
They're better. But, you know, it's one of those parts of the game where it's going to sort of probably come in and it's just a concentration on the opposition team now to start manning up, and there's no loose cannons everywhere, so that is one of the difficult procedures. When the long kick went into Lucas, that was one of them, they're hoping that they'll grab hold of, particularly when they're playing a chance against the boundary line, aren't they? I mean, the boundary line becomes the opponent's friend.
Kevin Sheedy speaking after the game today. Well, David Parkin also had plenty to say on what happened over the last couple of minutes of the game, and we also went to his press conference following today's big clash at the MCG.
Well, we've used it as much as anybody else, and they were superb at that period of the game. It was the right play. We were slow to react to get one-on-one so that we could force them to kick it long and give us a chance to get it back, so we take some criticism for that. But I've always thought that if we're going to apply a time limit to the full-back, who's got one of the most difficult jobs to kick the ball in after a point, I think nobody wants it, and it's pretty tough, and you can muck up and make yourself look very silly.
then there should be a time applied to the person kicking the goal, because that's downtime. It's not interesting. If television are making these sorts of pressures for us to change the game, then there should be a time limit on all people in possession at set plays, because we're standing around as we did today and watch it not being kicked up to 20 or 25 seconds before the umpire moves in and does something about it. The poor old fullback's getting about 15 or 20 seconds before they're onto him. So it would seem to me, if you're going to apply a rule, that should be for every player in every circumstance in the game, whether he's kicking a goal, kicking out from goal, or in the middle of the ground.
Carlton coach David Parkin, well, is that feasible, gentlemen? Can we introduce a rule that says you have a certain amount of time once you've marked it or once you've got the free kick to kick the footy or dispose of it?
I think with Parko there, he's come straight off the game and he's into the press conference there. Look, he said if you're kicking a goal, it's the same. There's downtime. No, it's not the same. I think Parko will rethink this, because you're kicking a goal, it's not a set play. This is almost a set play. You've been drilled in it. How many times you get drilled to kick a goal? You don't. It's a natural thing. You just go back and kick the ball. If there is a set play, it's up to the umpire to use common sense and work out that this situation during the match is played on the logic of the game, on the logic of how the game is progressing.
I think he is right from purely an entertainment point of view, though. I mean, really, there have been times watching Paul Salmon shoot for goal, he can go out for a snack and a toilet break and come back and he still hasn't had the kick, you know, and I think purely as a spectator, that's not great to watch. So personally, I think there's some validity in what he's saying.
But look, what he's talking about is a deliberate ploy to foil the opposition through suspending the time the ball is on the move. Whereas the likes of a Salmon kick at goal, there's no deliberate ploy of foiling the opposition. It's a progressive movement. You're trying to put a score on the board, not foil the opposition to the detriment of the game.
What do you think, Gas?
Oh, look, I think in the overall scheme of things, in general play, it'd be very hard to police, and I think umpires have got enough on their plate at the moment. But, yeah, look, I don't see it a big problem as players kicking for goal. I don't think they take an overly long amount of time. Everyone's a different individual, of course, and I think they still have got the discretionary powers to give the forwards a hurry on if they are kicking for goals, so I think it works okay.
There was one thing that I thought the most interesting, or one of the most interesting things of the day is in the first quarter today, Carlton had a kick at goal, and the man on the mark was about 55 metres out, the Essendon man, and the Carlton player was to kick in. He was probably going to kick from 60, 65. There were 14 Essendon players inside the defensive 50 in a grid-like pattern, and Carlton just kept chipping it around the 50, trying to find that crack or that chink in the armour to penetrate through. It's going to get to the situation where you'll keep doing that and you'll get someone like a Nathan Buckley run outside and he'll mark at 51 metres out and he's your best option.
Well, it has to get to that. I mean, a designated kickers type scenario. If it is going to be a slow play, the opposition are able to zone, well, we'll get to that stage.
Now listen, I've got to give you a rap and you a rap, because I was sitting at home on Saturday night watching the footy, St Kilda versus Hawthorn.
Yes, yeah, very enjoyable.
It was a bit different, wasn't it?
It was a very enjoyable way to call the football, because we're a little bit different, some great camera angles. I know Gary enjoyed being at one end of the ground.
Yeah, look, we had obviously two cameras shooting up the ground from either end, and it was a great, probably the first time I ever sat behind the goals to watch a game of footy. And look, Dermot did a magnificent job, and Ned, of course, we can blow each other's tyres up, but the clock counted up for a change rather than counting down. It was a very tight match, so the excitement factor was there. There wasn't a situation where you're sitting at home and you're thinking, oh, it was only 10 seconds ago, they can't win. We didn't know. And some of the statistics that we had on offer were also fantastic.
What about the days when the captain of the Melbourne Football Club would only sit in the smoker's stand when he wasn't playing at the MCG? But we had him in the outer having a pie with the St Kilda.
Where were the leather patches, by the way, too?
It's just enough of the pie, I think. So some nice low-fat sandwiches, David. Thank you.
How'd you go with the supporters in the outer, though?
Well, St Kilda Hawthorn, it wasn't a sellout by any stretch of the imagination, and I had three friendly supporters nearby who were able to tune into the bit of footage that we had, so it wasn't too bad.
We might just have to broadcast exactly where it is in the crowd.
I had security.
Now, what about the fact that Jason Dunster was out there? This is just remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a super recovery. He, although we didn't put one on the board, he was fantastic for the club because he opened up the forward line, and the likes of Nick Holland wouldn't have kicked 4 goals unless Jason had been directing the forward line, leading to the right positions and, well, opening up the space for him.
I think one of the points you made in the commentary the other night too was that he was almost hoping to be crunched in the early stages and get that out of his mind.
Yeah, very, very true. When you're out there and you take a niggle out onto the ground, you almost guard. It's almost the theory of John Kennedy. On a wet day, he used to make the players run out in the ground, find the muddiest patch in warm-up and roll in it. Otherwise, you'd tiptoe around it.
I thought you did that when you were a kid at school.
Yeah, well, the same ploy, because otherwise you'd find some blokes who might be a little bit careful and tiptoe around it for the first hard ball, whereas if you've already been in it, you think, what the hell, I'm already wet. Oh, let's have a go.
Now, there's an interesting graphic. Dermot, you can possibly take us through what you mean here by the number of times the ball was kicked inside 50 and then run inside 50.
All right, well, the 50-metre line in Hawthorn's scoring zone down Hawthorn's end, and when Hawthorn have gone over that line with kicks, it was 34 times, and they ran the ball over, which means a player was carrying it under his arm and on the run on 14 occasions. St Kilda have kicked over the line 48 and run it over 3 times. That basically means that St Kilda's midfield has not given the run that Hawthorn has to its forward line. Hence, Harford's kicked 3-4 goals from the midfield, and basically it's a very good indication that St Kilda are going to one specific target with the foot all the time. If you look at the go-to men, 23 times St Kilda have aimed for Stewie Lowe.
Does that suggest a real lack of confidence in Peter Everett at the moment? I mean, he's supposed to be their big, another big marking forward. They're not going through him.
Well, only 6 times they went to him, and actually in the first few seconds of the game, that big grab we saw earlier in the show, that was one of them. So 5 times for basically a full game is not enough. Look, he can be a good player, Everett. I think he's been overrated at the moment, but he has got a lot of talent, but he really does have to stand up and be counted.
I'm not quite sure if it was a lack of confidence in him, but it was his ability to get in the right spot so they could kick the ball to him. I just think he played a little, not so much dumb, might be a bit harsh, but perhaps didn't get to the right spot so the ball could get delivered to him.
As a forward, there is a golden rule, and that is you force your teammates to kick it to you by getting in the right position. He's not forcing them.
I thought one of the other innovations the other night was the fact that Andrew Maher actually managed to speak to Ken Judge at half-time. I've never seen that before.
That is amazing. At half-time, I was speaking after we came back to the central position, and we were talking about stats, and I said, "Excuse me, gents, I'm sorry, Drew, but I've got to talk about... I've never seen a coach talk to us at half-time."
Well, coaches talked to us after the game too, and after getting on so well with Andrew at half-time, he thought he'd have a yarn to him after the game, so here's Ken Judge.
Oh, we're pleased. We were probably a little bit undermanned and going in, but we just thought if we could be competitive for long enough, then we probably we might be able to come out in front. And I think that's what the players did. I mean, I thought their commitment was fantastic. We probably dropped off a bit in the third quarter, and St Kilda, to their credit, who played some good footy and made a pretty even ball game. But so I suppose in the end it was a good one to get away with.
What goes through your mind in a quarter like that third quarter where they just seem to come from nowhere and blokes who haven't had a touch all day start jumping out of the ground? What sort of goes through your mind in the coach's box at a time like that?
Oh, look, I suppose the worry is that when they're really good players like the Winmars and Lowe's and Everetts and Burks and Harveys and all these sort of players, I mean, you just hope you can hold them for as long as you can, and at some stage you're going to get away from them. You hope they don't do too much damage to you when they do. And I mean, they certainly those sort of guys gave them an enormous lift in the third quarter. And we just had to restructure a bit and hopefully try and get a handle back on it. I thought we did that reasonably well in the last quarter.
That's about as happy as you can see a coach these days, but it is an amazing situation because we've got Eade, Judge and Wallace, all guys who are probably the youngest in terms of age of the new coaches, and they're realising the importance of bringing the media inside the club room now, and I think we'll probably get a bit more of it in the future.
What's taken you so long to join the Hawthorn Coaches Club?
Making too much money doing this.
Have a look at the head of hair on those blokes. It's dropping out pretty quick.
Well, it's time to thank Rowan Connolly, the chief football writer of the Sunday Age, for joining us. It's way past your time for a Mac attack, I would think, on a Monday night.
I'll be hitting the South Melbourne one very shortly.
Rowan, thanks for your time.
Thanks,
very
mate.
shortly, on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Melbourne coach Neil Baum on Football Feedback.
Hey!